I'm Shmuel Lewis. I teach at the Tochnit Elul, the Midrashat, the Educational Center in Hanaton. Elul is a time of preparation for Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. And that means more than anything else, preparing to stand in judgment, to ask for forgiveness, for slicha and mechilah from God. How did one prepare to do such a thing? We generally think of standing in judgment before God as a reality in which God does something and something happens to us. But we need to learn that standing in judgment is something that we do. I'd like to focus on one element of that so that we can learn to do it better. And that is to internalize the status of one standing in judgment, the totality of one's position as being judged, whether one likes it or not. This brings to the forefront awareness of our ultimate dependency. And that should encourage us to let go of our own tendency to judge, to see that standing in judgment, the one standing in judgment is not well positioned to judge others. Judgmental thoughts about others are an obstacle to the tshuva that ought to precede standing in judgment. All the more so, they prevent one from doing what he ought in the moment of standing in judgment itself. They're also self-defeating. If we're busy with negative judgments about others, why should God overlook our own shortcomings? Rava says in the Talmud, anyone who relinquishes judging those who have wronged him, God passes over all his sins. As a proof text, he says, God bears iniquity and passes over sin. For whom does God pass over sin, says Rava? For one who bears iniquity. Bearing iniquity means the ability to accept the other, with all the other shortcomings, with all the things that aggravate and anger. We all know how to do that with spouses and with children. Rava says we need to learn to do that with everyone. We can learn something more about what it means to bear iniquity if we look at the full verse that Rava brings part of as proof text. That full verse says, "Who is a God like you, bearing iniquity and remitting transgression to the remnant of his people, who has not maintained his wrath forever, because he loves graciousness." God lets go, does not maintain his wrath, because God loves graciousness. Graciousness here is the translation of chesed. Chesed is a kind of spontaneous benevolence, gratuitous benevolence. That is, that God overcomes God's anger by coming in contact with God's own desire to be benevolent. And that's what we need to learn to do in order to forgive others, to stand in judgment ourselves. There's no more appropriate time to fulfill the mitzvah of imitating God in this way than during Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. The mitzvah to imitate God applies only to God's aspect of chesed. There is no such mitzvah vis-a-vis God's aspect of din, midat din. Humans only appropriately judge other humans when they can act as agents for the society they represent, and that requires a specific appointment. The chesed, gratuitous goodness, is given to everyone to do. We should strengthen our chesed at this time, even from people who have wronged us. And this means that the deepest level, our commitment to others should not be contractual, should not be based on assumption of reciprocal giving and taking, but on freely given benevolence, like the chesed of God. Elul is a time of year to get in touch with that chesed that sustains the world and lets humanity exist, the chesed of slicha. One important way of doing that is to recognize our own dependence, to be ma'avir al midotenu, to pass over judging those who have wronged us, to neutralize ungenerous thoughts, and to overcome anger with chesed. If we succeed in this, we will invite less strict judgment on ourselves and strengthen the chesed of slicha for all. For whom does God pass over sin? For one who bears iniquity. Shana Tova.